Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. You know, these programs, they come and they go so fast. And this program will probably do the same. But one thing that doesn't change is the fact that we are here bringing you new paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. Mine too. I'm right there in that list of those who want their dreams to come true. And today's program, yes, I will give you the preliminary information a little later. It won't be preliminary because it'll be later in the program. But what we are going to talk about with a returning guest to our program, and I am thrilled about the conversation we're going to have regarding the American Meditation Institute, or AMI. It is announcing that the third annual National Conscience, not consciousness, but Conscience Month will be observed in January. That is, as of this date that we are speaking, and that you are hearing this on the radio broadcast, will be January 2022, the year of Deuces Wild, with the goal of encouraging individuals across the nation and around the world to participate, to practice consciously using their conscience as their guide. Since 1996, AMI has provided a comprehensive training in the world's oldest holistic mind-body medicine centered around one revolutionary principle, and that principle is the human conscience is the key to unlock unlimited wisdom and creativity to solve all. We're going to see if it's true. All of life's challenges? Okay, we'll find out. Our special guest returning here on the program, I am thrilled to have him back because, boy, we had a great time the last time he was on the program. He's the originator of the National Conscience Month. He's the founder of the American Meditation Institute for Yoga Science and Philosophy. And his name is Leonard Perlmutter. And I thank you so much for being back with us again. I was thrilled after our first interview. We had such a great time. Thank you for rejoining us here for the beginning of the new year.
Well, it was a delight, and this is a real pleasure and a real honor to be back. Thank you very much for sharing the invitation with me.
I'm going to share with you also some numbers because they're important because of what's happening. I just looked at the latest statistics, the analytics, if you will, of the podcasts that we have here called Tell Me Your Story. Now, about a year and a half ago, July of 2020, I started doing video editing. I started posting my interviews on YouTube. These videos, people can watch them on YouTube. All you have to do is go to the Tell Me Your Story Richard Dugan podcast channel or videocast channel. But it's the podcasts. We expanded to about 12 or 14 other sites, including iHeart and Amazon Music. And I have to tell you, I just checked into this, Leonard. And this is exciting because it tells me that maybe what you are promoting here today is actually starting to happen, at least in part, and I will actually acknowledge that it is in part, to what we are doing here on this program. The analytics have shown overall that we've had over 57,000 listens in 4 years. 4 years, 57,700 listens. Now, I broke that down, and I looked at each year. Mm-hmm. Then I looked at just the last 12 months. And as I said, 57,700. In just the last 12 months, we've had over 30,000 listens. That is fantastic. Double what, that is way over what was listened to in the first 3 years.
Yes.
So that has got to count for something. That means something. So maybe those numbers are starting to mean something to me in that regard, that more and more people are listening.
Well, it means one thing for sure. You are a seed planter.
Well, I am a farmer. I mean, you know, in my last life, I
lived
lived on...
You are Johnny Appleseed. Reincarnated.
Well, I'll take it. I absolutely will. I love doing this because I meet so many great people, especially those with incredible beards. And you got one. You got one, Santa.
Oh,
It's beautiful, Leonard. And I'm not going out that. I did for a while because I couldn't bend my right arm because that's the arm I shave with. And then once I was able to do it, I thought, I kind of like this, but I don't want to go nuts. Anyway, the national conscience recognition, if you will, that you are promoting, I think is fantastic in terms of what you are wanting to accomplish. And I guess maybe that's kind of where we want to start with the National Conscience Month of January 2022, which we have been running since I think it was October. A commercial I recorded for this during this program, which is 4 times a week. And we've been promoting it and we'll promote it throughout the month of January. What is the goal? What is the overall goal? What would you need to see, if that's the right word, and maybe it's more metaphysical or metaphorical, if you will, than literal, to show you that the National Conscience Month is having the impact that you want, and what is that impact that you would like to see?
well, I'll be very honest with you right now. I have no desire nor expectations for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, my joy comes from the planting of the seeds. I have no claim to the outcome of any action that comes through me. I am in service as best I can to the truth. And the truth is, from my personal experience, that by using our conscience, we feel better physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and relationships that have been problematic have been healed. So I just want to share that news with people and provide them the opportunity not to listen to me or to believe me, but to experiment as scientists for themselves, to experience the truth themselves.
Do you find that in your day-to-day life, as you move amongst the other mortals on this planet, and when I say mortals, I am speaking specifically of the human beings, not the spiritual beings, they are immortal, that inhabit those human bodies, that there are people who are beginning to, they're beginning to go with that flow where this is the way I understand it, and I'd love for your perspective on this too. There are these energy waves that are moving through the universe, and we pass through them. The planets in the solar system, they pass through them, and it changes the consciousness, if you will, even slightly, of the human being. Not so much the animal kingdom, or, flora and fauna, but more of the human species. And that there is actually, as much as we want to tout free will to be self-determining, there are certain aspects of the universe that say, yeah, you can still hold on to the resentment and the aggression and the lack of problem solving, and the list goes on. It's similar to something that you actually said in one of the quotes here, having to do with this day and time, that today's problems were born in the human mind, and their solutions can only be found in the human mind. And when we allow the mind's conscience to connect us to the source of our creativity, we will discover unimaginable answers that will transform our world. Do you think that those waves of energy are part of the divine, the divine plan? There will be those who will resist. They want nothing to do with it. They want to continue status quo. Leave things as they are, no change. But the rest of us are like, Had enough. I want change. I don't know what it's going to look like. Yeah, it's a little fearful. It's like looking into the black void. You don't know what's there. But it's a heck of a lot better, being there than continuing down this road.
Well, I subscribe to that 100%. I think that that's absolutely correct. And yes, certain people will not want to change, and that's okay.
Yeah.
We have to all be okay with that.
Yes.
The
Yes.
question is, who am I and what is my purpose of life and how do I want to live my life? Do I truly want to be free of all pain, misery, and bondage? If so, I have the creativity and the wisdom at the core of my being to experience it in this very lifetime. And if one human being can do something like that, it means any of us can do it with the requisite amount of creative energy being directed toward that goal.
What's the difference in your mind, or even the connection? Maybe that's a better question, but I'll kind of put it not so much either or. You can address both. What's the difference or the connection between our conscience and our, not just consciousness, but our still small voice, our intuition?
Our conscience is the hardware through which our intuition makes its way into our conscious mind. It's a little bit analogous to a television or a computer receiving signals from a far distance and then materializing them in a non-local way at another location.
Well, one of the aspects that we're going to talk about here on the program regarding the National Conscience Month, which is January 2022, will be basically to remind, educate, and raise awareness about the value of using your conscience as a guide to making better decisions. And we're going to talk more about that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're here with Leonard Perlmutter, and we are really, really excited about this campaign, and we're going to continue talking about that here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and this is a very exciting program that I hope that you are enjoying. Leonard is sharing with us here, Leonard Perlmutter, the aspects of National Conscience Month, January 2022. It's here to build and activate a national movement that embraces the role of conscience-driven choices. We talk about choices all the time here on Tell Me Your Story, telling people that we're giving them choices and knowledge of those choices in experiencing more health, happiness, security, and creating more rewarding lives for our families, community, and nation. And I would add to that, and the world. And encouraging individuals to act through simple experiments that add in increasing positivity, self-confidence, and self-reliance. What kind of experiments would we kind of put out there? You know that the HeartMath group, they put these devices all over the planet to sort of gauge the energy and the direction, the flow, and so forth during certain times. They even saw on their instruments, I don't know if it was hours or minutes prior to 9/11, as we like to call it, which was 20 years ago, that the energy just suddenly shifted. It was as if the entire planet knew what was about to happen, and then it happened. So what about these experiments that we can do to help build these different elements, especially increasing positivity, self-confidence? That's huge, as well as self-reliance.
Well, the first rule must always be, don't take on anything that's too much too soon.
Ah.
If it's easy, it will be right. If it's right, it's going to be easy. What does that mean on a practical level? If you feel that you are carrying too much weight on the physical body, and the question comes up, am I going to eat this cookie? Am I not going to eat this cookie? Well, right there is an experiment. And depending on who I am and what I bring to that relationship, I might decide that I can give up the entire cookie, or I can give up half of the cookie, or I can give up a quarter of the cookie so that my conscience can guide me. It doesn't really matter which choice you make, as long as for you it's relatively easy and your intention is to follow the wisdom of the conscience.
So the experiment is about making choices on a conscious level and evaluating the potential results thereof.
That's correct. But although, let me add this, that the more you use your conscience, it's less and less of a gamble because you always know that if you can align your thoughts, words, and deeds with the unerring wisdom reflected by the conscience, I'm talking about this super conscious wisdom from the super conscious portion of the mind, the outcome will always lead me and all of my connections for our highest and greatest good.
Well, it's fascinating to me to think about this process of coming upon a situation, an experience, if you will, and either feeling good about it or otherwise, and saying, you know what, I like the situation, I'm not going to change anything, or I don't care much for the situation and I'm going to change it. I'm going to choose to do something different, something else. And it kind of goes along with, and I've, it's almost as if I keep saying this, and it's like people are getting tired of hearing it, but I don't think I say it in every program, and that is Einstein's definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Whereas,
And also, Einstein said that a problem cannot be solved on the level at which it arises. It must be solved on a higher level.
yes,
And for us,
yes,
that higher level is experienced by using our conscience.
yeah. I have had numerous experiences in just this year alone, and I don't know if this has anything to do with numerology or astrology or what other ologies there are out there that people are using to gauge what's happening. But I know that a lot of people have been going through some very, and I like putting it this way better than any other, very challenging experiments, shall we say.
Yes.
And some people continue to make the same choice with that experiment that they've been playing with for, if not decades, lifetimes.
Yes. Yes.
And I find myself in a similar situation too, in my life, in this day and age, where, okay, what am I going to do? Whether it be on a financial level, whether it be in a relationship, whether it be in job, regardless of what the category, it's like, okay, what is it that I want to accomplish? Where is it that I want to be? How do I want to live? How do I want to feel? And I would like to think that most people, Leonard, they want to feel happy. They want to feel free.
Yes.
They want to feel safe. I think one of my favorite lines from John Denver was that he says that we want to be wild and free. Now, that doesn't mean causing havoc and chaos, not that kind of wild. And I'm wondering if you can maybe touch upon that phrase as you hear it, as you see it and sense it and feel it, in terms of us as the spiritual, immortal being that we are. What would that say to you, being wild and free?
I would say that it would mean that an individual is disciplined in order to experience that wildness and that freedom that they deeply desire. So, what does that mean, discipline? Because that word, discipline, has a negative connotation in our culture. You know, certain words have a cultural spin that bring about a negative connotation. It's not real, but people just accept it. So, discipline is a word that now is equated with denial of some pleasure. I'm being denied something. No, 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 no. What it means is when you have a relationship, any kind of relationship, it doesn't matter what the relationship is. It could be professional, it could be family oriented, personal, recreational, sexual, it doesn't matter. Whenever we have a relationship, it means one thing. I have to take an action. And that action is going to bring about a consequence. Well, if I really want to be happy and healthy and wild and free, then how am I going to get to point B from point A? And the key is to discipline myself, my mind, discipline my mind and the habits of my unconscious mind that are not going to help me experience my deepest driving desire. Thousands of years ago, women and men wrote down these words: you are your deepest driving desire. As your deepest driving desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so becomes your destiny. So we have to be honest with ourselves. What do we really want? Do we really want to be free and wild? Do we really want security and happiness? If so, then that has to be our work in the world, in the midst of every relationship that requires an action that brings about a consequence that will either enable us to experience the fulfillment of that deep driving desire or will delay the prospect.
We're talking with Leonard Perlmutter. He is the founder of the American Meditation Institute. The website is americanmeditation.org. And he has several books that are of more than just several here, but three in particular, actually two in particular, that we want to focus on. The first one, of course, is The Heart and Science of Yoga. And it is empowering self-care program for a happy, healthy, joyful life. The other is Your Conscience, which is what we talked about in our last interview, having to do with the key to unlock limitless wisdom and creativity and solve all of life's challenges. And I like the word challenges better than any other phrase or word that can be uttered because sometimes the challenges are at a 1 or 2 level of difficulty. Some challenges are at a 9 or a 10 a level of difficulty, and some are in between. But they're all challenges, and they all are teaching us. And as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, I want to talk to you, Leonard, about the aspect and the difference from your perspective as I share it with you, the difference between mistakes and learning experiences right here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're talking with Leonard Perlmutter, and we're talking about the work that he is doing as well as the national this is the month, the National Conscience Month, January of 2022. That's right. This is the year when deuces are wild, as they say. Wait until not only the 2nd, but the 22nd of February. You think things went nuts. They're going to go crazy with deuces wild on those 2 days. In any way, let's go back to what I was asking you about. And that has to do with someone challenged me the other day, Leonard. They said, well, in a rather frustrated and angry voice, well, what about all the mistakes that you have made? And I I don't know, I didn't know at first where this came from, but I knew it came from my higher self. I said, I have never made a mistake in my life. I have only had learning experiences. What are your thoughts in that regard?
Well, I absolutely agree 100%. There are no mistakes because everything is a learning experience. It's there to teach us. It's up to us to be very conscientious and to turn a stumbling block into a stepping stone. And for that, one of my greatest teachers is Thomas Edison.
Ah,
Now, here was an inventor, a fellow who was looking to develop a uh, a way to create an electric light bulb,
mm-hmm.
an filament that would work economically and practically.
I know where you're going.
Each time he did an experiment that didn't work out uh, ideally, oh, he learned something new and then got his eraser out and recomputed the equation and recomputed the equation and recomputed the equation until he experienced what he was looking for. Why? Because he was dedicated to his deepest driving desire.
Mm. You know, I have to wonder, I'm sure that they have, maybe in the Smithsonian, the final version that actually worked. My question is, do they have any of the others that didn't produce or illuminate? Because to me, those would be the things that you'd want to look at.
Yes, track that trail that the bloodhound was on.
Yeah.
And see how he got from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to the final bulb.
Yeah. And I think the question that was asked of him was, how many times did you fail before you discovered this version that illuminates the room? And he said, well, I never failed. I just found 990 ways that it didn't work.
That's it. That's good.
Yeah. I have lived by the philosophy, one of the philosophies, that there's always a workaround.
Yes.
And the other is work with what you have until you get what you want. Now, that applied more to the radio stations that I worked with, that were working with, as I progressed through each station through the years, somewhat primitive equipment. And then now we're in the digital age, and I'm still working with some analog equipment, but it still works. It's still, a matter of fact, sometimes it works better than the digital stuff.
Right.
If I could, well, that's not a question of could. I would love to give up my truck. Okay, as much as I love driving it and getting from point A to point B, there are so many different ways to get from point A to point B without owning a vehicle. Now, does that take away my freedom? Absolutely not. Yeah, this is one of the interesting things I found, Leonard, and I'd love for your have you comment on this. When people started complaining about the mandates that were placed on society in different communities regarding the pandemic, wearing a mask and washing your hands regularly and staying 6 feet apart and so forth, and even shutting things down initially. And they started to scream, "You are usurping my First Amendment rights." And I thought, what country are you living in? How is it that somebody is usurping your constitutional rights? I have the same constitutional rights, and I don't feel that way. Matter of fact, I phrase it this way. I exercise my constitutional rights by wearing a mask, by washing my hands, by staying 6 feet apart, by doing those things that keep not only me safe, but others. And it's like, I know that it is a matter of perspective. First of all, share with us your observations in that regard, and then can you share with us how, through the American Meditation Institute and all of the research and the study, education that you have gathered over the many years that you've been doing this, that we can start to change our perspective?
Well, I think that the situation that you portrayed is very common. You see, every human being suffers from a disease that we have never heard of. It is called tempoplegia. Tempoplegia is the name of the disease.
That's a new one on me.
It's a new one, and I coined that.
Ah. Okay.
And what does it mean, tempoplegia? It means we become a tempoplegic in certain situations, in certain relationships, when our emotional buttons are pushed. In certain kinds of situations, when our emotional buttons are pushed, we become paralyzed to make good choices. That paralysis, that paralyzing situation that occurs means that I become temporarily paralyzed and cannot make sound choices. So I become, in that instance, in that situation, a tempoplegic. I become temporarily paralyzed. And every human being experiences that. For some, it's the issue about mask wearing. For some, it's about eating jelly donuts. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. It could be anything. And I do believe, and I'd like to solicit your opinion about this. I believe at every instance, everyone takes actions to the best of their ability, to the best of their ability at that time, at that moment. But each of us is a work in progress. This is not the final product. With every relationship, we are learning and growing and changing.
Well, I'm going to address that, but just a reminder to you listening and watching Tell Me Your Story. We are here Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. for our special edition of Tell Me Your Story, streaming live at those times at richarddugan.com. We podcast at SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, iHeartRadio, as I mentioned earlier, and Amazon Music, and many others. And we are also on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. We are also going to be linked to Leonard's website, Leonard Perlmutter's website, AmericanMeditation.org. And we hope that you will continue listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and Leonard Perlmutter is our guest here on the program, and we're talking about the National Conscience Month, January 2022, that begins this weekend as we are broadcasting the podcasting and videocasting this. I want to address what you were just saying about that. I find it interesting that when we get into that temporary paralysis, that we start listening to everybody else except us. And that somehow, some way, for whatever reason, we start, the more we hear from what what has been termed, the more that we hear from our echo chambers, the sources that we listen to, that we agree with, the more we begin to believe what they are saying, whether it be right or wrong, whether it be correct or incorrect. And actually, that's probably the more proper or correct phrase to use. Because I remember I got into a discussion with someone about that there is no right or wrong. It's either correct or it's incorrect. And it doesn't matter what it's based on. You can base it on science or you can base it on science fiction, because people will believe. If you keep, what was it? The big lie. The more times you tell it, the more people will believe it, whether it's correct or not. And so what ends up happening is that people fall into they are so and I don't know, maybe this is part of the paralysis. They get so fatigued over trying to parse out the information and figure out what's correct and what's incorrect. They don't want to do it anymore. They're just exhausted, so they're going to take somebody else's word for it. When what they should be doing, that we promote on this program, is going within during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we encourage people to go within, to sit and go into that quiet, still, calm, safe place and listen to and listen for that still small voice of guidance, of encouragement, of insight, of relaxation, of rejuvenation, of re-energization, if you will. And if they did that, it would sure calm down a lot of situations that we have right now, not just in this country, but around the world over all of this. Now, whether governments and institutions are going to go along with this, it's not about governments and institutions going along with it. This has nothing to do with anything but individuals. Okay? We're not trying to get a mass group of people to go along with anything. We're asking individuals. You decide. You who are listening, you who are watching, Leonard, myself, we decide. And that's where the paralysis is lifted, when we start listening to that still small voice. And Leonard, I'm sure you've had experiences where you've listened to the still small voice. You're going, no, I can't. No, that's not my plan. That has nothing to do with that's contrary to my plan. And yet the voice will come back, and I've had this happen in a financial situation, and it comes back again and again and again and again. And okay, all right, I'll do it. And I go and I do it. And afterwards, I look back and I'm going, man, if I hadn't done that when I finally did, things would be a whole lot worse right now. A whole lot worse. And
so the issue for every human being is that our perceptions, that which we perceive, is skewed by our conceptions.
Aha. Yes.
It's not so much what we see in the world, it's what we think about what we see in the world.
Yeah.
And what we think we see is what our previous concepts that are stored in our unconscious mind tell us. And where did we get all these concepts? Oh, we got some from mom, and some from dad, and some from grandpa, and some from grandma. We got some from friends that we used to play with at the schoolyard. We got some from politicians and from celebrities and the culture. So it begs the question, and I think this is what you're saying also, Richard. It begs the question, whose life am I living? Whose life am I living? Not mine.
Yeah.
Not mine. I'm living someone else's life that gifted me this faulty concept that is now the software on the hard drive of my mind.
Wow. That is some powerful stuff. Whose life am I living? Now, this now takes us into another realm here that I want to talk about as we continue. We're going to continue talking with Leonard Perlmutter. We're going to continue talking about our conscience and our consciousness. We're going to continue talking about our spiritual connectedness here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we are talking about another level, another higher level that we need to get into, Leonard, before we come to the end of our program. And we still have some time, I hope, with you. I've used this analogy many times, and I use it in a very benevolent fashion. You may or may not have seen the television series Star Trek Next Generation. Now, regular listeners know where I'm going. But There's a character. Roddenberry probably didn't intend for this character to be viewed in this context, but it certainly spoke to me. And the character was called the Borg. It was made up, of course, of many, many, many entities from many different parts of the galaxy. And they were all modified. You might call them, some use the term transhuman, meaning that they've been transformed into a combination of electronic and digital and biological. They've got hardware and software, quite literally. And they're all connected to each other via, we'll call it Wi-Fi, as well as to central command, who or whatever that is. Now, the metaphor for me is, and again, from a benevolent perspective, it shows how we as spiritual beings are connected. And that each one of us has a different task. You and I don't do the same thing, do we? I don't think so. You're not doing a radio show and focusing on the things that I am, and I'm not writing. I can guarantee you I'm not writing books. I'm still working on the first one. But yet, when we tap into that still small voice, that consciousness that is within us, that higher, that divine connection there, we're tapping into quote unquote central command that is giving us. Leonard gets different instructions than instructions that are given to Richard. But those instructions are geared towards Leonard doing his part of the grand design, the big picture, and the instructions that Richard is given, the same thing. But they're not the same task. He was asked to chop wood, and I was asked to carry water. Isn't that a Buddhist phrase in terms of calming the mind?
It is.
Sure. Chop wood, carry water, chop wood, carry water.
Right.
And that is the example the Borg gives to me of how we, even though we have our own mind and consciousness, I have to wonder, could there come a point in someone's life, Leonard, where we have consciously given our, I'm going to put it this way, our free will over to our consciousness, our divine self. And now our lives are lived solely to serve that still small voice from the divine. There are lots of voices that some people hear.
Are you saying, in other words, thy will, not my will?
Oh my God, did I say that?
I'm asking the question.
Or as Urkel would say, did I say that? Yes, I did say that.
Yes,
and the beautiful thing is that we still don't lose our individuality.
No, it's just enhanced. The real personality can grow and blossom.
Yeah.
It's not any different than the cell in search of an organ. Desiring a higher purpose.
I pause because, which is not a good thing to do when you're doing a radio broadcast or podcast. Video, they can still see you and you're just sitting there going, why aren't they talking? No, but it's like there is the, I don't want to say the doctrine, okay, the doctrine and dogma of certain philosophies that basically says that it's God's way or the highway, okay? You either do it God's way or you are in defiance of God. You are sinning, okay, and so forth. And I say...
Well, what does it say back to the ancient Torah from the Hebrew people? Mm-hmm. You shall love and these people were just using words that they could communicate with.
Right.
So you have to redefine words so that current usage makes more sense. But
Right.
it says something to the effect that you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your might.
Right.
And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart.
Yeah.
But take heed to yourselves, lest your heart be deceived, and you serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he'll shut up the rains, and the ground the earth will not yield its fruit for you, and you will perish quickly off of the good land which the Lord hath created. So it's, hey, either you're in alignment with the truth or you're in conflict with the truth. And when we are in conflict with the truth, when our outer actions conflict with our inner wisdom, that inner conflict becomes the mother of all problems and pain.
Yeah. And a lot of people will, or actually have, succumbed to just to use a term, they've succumbed to the dark side. Not evil and the devil and Satan and all of that stuff. No, 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 no. They have succumbed to other gods, i.e., other individuals. Now, when I read some of the ancient wisdom teachings, which include not only the book I grew up with as a Catholic, the Bible, both Old and New Testament, mind you, as well as many others, they have turned their will, so to speak, over to other individuals. And in my growing up in broadcasting, I worked for a Christian station during the heyday of televangelism. And people were giving up and worship. I can't think of any other word to use. They were worshiping these individuals that go by many different names I won't name here. And many people lose their lives, both figuratively and literally.
Yes.
And I sit here going, well, wait a minute. So what's the difference between you quoting him as opposed to you quoting him inside, or it, or they, or what have you, the still small voice that is guiding you? And that was the other thing that always perplexed me. I would hear this phrase many times at the Christian station, that your relationship with God or Jesus, whatever, however you want to phrase it, it's a personal relationship. Well, then what business is it of yours? It's my relationship with my God, my Creator, my friend, as I like to call my still small voice, not yours. And yeah, maybe you're hearing something. I don't know what it is, but it has nothing to do with me. You know, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, by the way, Leonard, I just got a message from God to tell me you got to shave the beard. Okay? Because it's an abomination. Okay? We need to see your face. Who am I to tell you? And vice versa. And that was something that always I thought, wow, you people are railing against having false gods, and yet you've put yourself up as false gods because people are following you. They are giving to you. You use the tithe passages to get them to give to you their wherewithal. And on and on and on. And it's not just within Christendom. You know, it happens.
Here's an excellent idea for people.
Mm-hmm.
They can use their conscience in those kinds of relationships because, you see, it's the conscience that can determine for us and help us to see when we have a relationship with a person, if that person is coming into our awareness to teach us what to do, or is that person really coming into our awareness to teach us what not to do? Mm-hmm. Both are very, very critical teachers. Yeah. Very important for all of us. Yeah. That's why I tell people that one of my most important teachers has been Elvis Presley. Because I fell in love at 10 years old with Elvis. I loved him when I was 20 and 30 and 40, et cetera, et cetera. I love him today because I loved him. I gave him a lot of my attention. Because I gave him so much attention, I had an intimate understanding of choices that he made, many of which were in conflict with the wisdom reflected by my conscience. And so he taught me in many cases what not to do. He, through his life and through his actions, was teaching me which burners on the stove were hot, which burners on the stove were not.
Well, I will tell you that I have had a teacher similarly who has taught me, and his name is Donald J. Trump. And back in 2016, I got sucked into the what do you call it? The political realm. I was trying to stay out of it. I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I got sucked in September of 2019. Or no, 2020. And it took me 6 months to get unsucked. And I went through 4 phases, Leonard, 4 phases. And the first phase was just what you said. Thank you, teacher, for teaching me how not to behave.
Yes.
All right. The next phase was a phase of forgiveness. I forgive you, but more importantly, I forgive myself for allowing myself to be drawn into this quagmire. The third phase was a question from the heart, genuine, human compassion for another human being. What is it that you are so afraid of that it makes you behave the way that you do? And then one of my guests shared me a 4th level, a 4th phase, and that's where it comes to an end. And it is 3 simple words, still from that human place of compassion and understanding. I love you. That's it. I love you. He, like anybody else that we've got challenges with, has every right to be here just like we do. We don't have to like what they say or do. Okay? We don't. But, hey, what are you going to do?
Well, you're absolutely correct. In 2 of the things just really were standouts for me. The first was that everybody has these faulty concepts and are paralyzed by them. So it engenders a tremendous amount of compassion for everyone.
Yeah.
A compassion for everyone. And the second point is about the fear. Fear, every fear must be examined. You know, Roosevelt was correct when he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. So why do we fear? Why do we become afraid? Only 2 reasons. I'm afraid I might lose what I have, or I'm afraid I might not get what I want. And both of those beg the question, who am I?
Yeah.
Who is aware of this emotion called fear? And if you think that you are the body, and you think that you are the mind and your thoughts and your desires and your emotions, then you are going to remain in pain and you are going to remain in service to fear. But if you know and know that you know through your own personal experiment with the truth reflected by the conscience, that you are simply spirit, pure consciousness, wisdom, bliss, and fullness, having a human experience. Having a human experience. That's why the ancients said, it's not me, the Christ that lives within me, you see.
Yeah.
Having this human experience.
Yeah.
Then everything becomes service, as you said before.
Yeah.
Becomes service to this truth.
Yeah. And there's no question. There is no questioning. There is no justifying to others. You just serve. in whatever capacity you are asked to serve. I think that there is a point at which people, especially in relationships, they initially start out with a genuine interdependent service to the other person. But it starts to change over time into a codependent level of service to the relationship and to that other person.
Mm-hmm.
And we start to lose ourselves, but not in a way that is self-supporting, self-affirming, if you will. And again, this has nothing.
We don't attract positive people.
Yeah.
Because we are projecting something other than that, and it's the lock and the key philosophy. The key is looking for the lock, and the lock is looking for the key. So we project negativity, and we receive the negativity. Because that's all people can see.
Yeah, exactly.
They can't see the real us.
Can't see the real us. And it's amazing to me, in many instances, and I'll put it this way, how unwilling they are to see the real them, That takes us to another level. Self-knowledge. Part of going within has to do, if I'm correct, Leonard, in looking at self. And we have what I like to refer to as and I'm not the first to say this, and it has both a light side and a shadow side. I like to use the word shadow more than dark, because a shadow side implies that there is something blocking the light from coming in.
Right, that's right. The obstacle.
The obstacle. And when we confront that obstacle, and we take on that challenge of confronting that obstacle, it becomes more and more transparent, and the light comes through.
You're talking about self-discipline.
Well, yes.
That's what it takes. That's what it takes to extricate the obstacles from the mind that is inhibiting the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This, as always, is a fascinating program. I have been blessed over the years as we end 2021 and enter 2022, the year of Deuces Wild. I'm going to use that. I'm sorry, but it fits. It just so fits. That this is something that, I have to say I was quite blessed, as well as honored and humbled, by a friend of mine that I work with, who has watched me for 15 years. He's listened to me for 15 years, listened to these programs for 15 years. And he said to me, I realize this is coming from somebody who can't really give you an objective perspective, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. He says, I've listened to you talk. We've had conversations over the years. I've watched the things that you have done. And he said, not me, he said, and what I see is you walking your talk. Now, I wrote a song. I can now claim songwriter to my resume.
That's cool.
Title of the song is called I'm a Good Man. And the lyrics basically for the chorus are, I'm a good man, doing the best I can. Where I'm going is where I'm coming from. And quite honestly, for men and women, we're all just doing the best we can. Now, did my parents make any mistakes raising me? I think, Leonard, you would say, absolutely not. They did the best they could with what they had at the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Look how I turned out. Someone would say, well, not so great, Richard. You got a big mouth and you can't shut up. But I've got a very inquisitive mind, curious mind. And you have illuminated for us here on the program, your mind and the things that are important to you. The National Conscience Month, January 2022 is what we're talking about. We'll be promoting it all month long. And we're going to continue talking with Leonard here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really, I said it at the beginning of the program, and I told you it went by like a shot for me. I mean, I can't believe we've already been speaking for an hour, and it doesn't seem like it's been that long, but we've covered so much ground. What is, what I guess I should ask you, how did the concept of the National Conscience Month come about for you back in and again, I believe it was 1996 or 95?
Well, in 1996, I founded the American Meditation Institute. And I would say that soon thereafter, I had this desire to start a National Conscience Month. The time was not ready, and I did that in 2019, and 2020 was the first annual.
So this is the second annual for the National Conscience Month.
This is actually the third annual.
Oh, the third. Okay. Yeah. And that's right, 2022. I got to flip the page on the calendar. How did you go about letting people know? Just emails and on your website and so forth? Did you utilize social media in a big way? And did you get some good response? And what about some of maybe the criticisms, if any?
Haven't seen any criticism.
That's good.
But we did use some social media. We used the emails. We used our classes and conversations that we had in different speaking opportunities that I had. And just slowly, it grew of its own accord.
Wow. Well, we're going to help it to continue to grow because we're going to continue to promote it and encourage people to become a part of this campaign, to start to rely more on their conscience, listening to their still small voice. It's all tied together. There is no separation. There's no compartmentalization. And that's one of the other, I would have to say, that's one of the other nice things about our lives is you can't compartmentalize. You can try, give it a shot. It doesn't work. I love quoting people back in the 60s. Now, I was just a little kid in the 60s. But back in the 60s, you used to hear the phrase from kids graduating from college or sometimes dropping out of high school saying, "Mom, Dad, I'm not continuing on with my formal education. I'm going to go wherever it is they wanted to go. I'm going to go to San Francisco. I'm going to go to India. I'm going to go here. I'm going to go there," to try to, and the phrase is, find myself. And the reality is, you don't have to go anywhere to find yourself, do you?
No. Wherever you go, there you are.
There you are. I love that. Leonard, this has been a wonderful conversation. Is there, at this particular point in time in the transition from one year to the next, and granted, on the one hand, it's sort of man-made, and yet at the same time, it is based upon the cyclical patterns of our planet.
Yes.
Any particular message, insight, inspiration that you would like to share with us before we go into our final segment here?
Well, people should know that every thought that comes into their awareness is not an imperial command. It's only a suggestion. Every thought is only a suggestion. And only your conscience knows for sure whether it's to be served for the highest good or to be sacrificed. And that energy can be repurposed for the highest good.
I like that aspect of it because then there's nothing wasted. There's nothing thrown away. It's just repurposed. This is Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and we're talking with Leonard Perlmutter, and we have been discussing throughout this program our own ability to connect with the divine, and again, whatever other phrase you wish to use, whatever other personal pronoun you wish to put there, and to live a happier, healthier, more fulfilled life. And I have to tell you, Leonard, that in spite of, and maybe even because of, I always put it that way because sometimes it's not in spite of, it's because of certain challenges in my life today, I'm optimistic. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm optimistic. And I'm actually overall, I'm happy. I consider myself healthy. Aside from the fact that I have a missing tooth that I'm hopefully going to get fixed in 2022, a tooth in 2022, and I just see opportunities, and maybe it's partly because I've always felt that there's always a workaround. Okay, if as a matter of fact, I was talking with someone today in regards to that because I went to my dental appointment for a consult on getting the tooth filled in. Anybody got a chiclet? I've got some super glue and I'm going to shove it in there and put it in. Well, I don't think a chiclet will do it. I said, I don't care. I just want to fill the hole. But I consider myself healthy and very, very, very blessed as I get to do these programs. So thank you so much for blessing me and our listeners today.
Well, thank you so much for offering this invitation to me. It's humbling.
I'm going to ask you those 3 questions I asked you at the end of our last conversation. But before I do, I need to let you folks know that you are listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We are giving you choices. What great choices you've got now after listening to this program. To help make your dreams come true, choices and knowledge of those choices. And when I say that, it's like, okay, here's the choice, title of choice. And now here's the backstory on that choice. Here's what it is. And this is what it can do for you. If you choose it, you don't have to. Nobody's forcing you. No one's got a gun to your head or a rope around your neck. And we are looking for those new ways of living. And I got to tell you, whether it's meditation and or yoga, which we'll have to talk about in another program, whatever works for you, whatever resonates with you, please do it. Give it a chance. Give it a shot, okay? And enjoy the life that you have right now. We are also on YouTube. We're video streaming. I should say these are video casts, if you will, on YouTube and the Tell Me Your Story Richard Dugan website or channel, if you will. We're also on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio. And we're also on, what do they call it? Oh, Amazon Music. That was the one. Thank you, Jeff Bezos, for that. We are also live at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Sundays. Monday mornings at 1 a.m. for those of you who are up late or early. And then, of course, Wednesday mornings, it's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We also ask if you can and you'd like to support the work that we are doing on this program, we would greatly appreciate that. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is. If you can support the work we're doing, not just by listening and increasing that listener number by, oh my gosh, 57,000. Wow. I'll even take that much in cash, 57,000. I'm humble because it'll be used for this program. But whatever you can give us, we'd greatly appreciate it. That's why we have a PayPal account. It is for your security as well as ours. And also participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision. Go within. I know that it'll be a challenge to learn about self and especially going behind the barriers into the shadows. But that's where you'll get yourself free. What is it they say, Leonard? You shall know the truth about yourself, and it'll set you free?
That's right. That's right. That's right.
And with all of that, I will ask you these 3 questions. You may have addressed them to some degree during the program, but I like to ask them directly. First of those 3 questions is, who is Leonard Perlmutter?
Essentially spirit, having a human experience in time and space through a mind-body-sense complex.
What is it that you hope to or want to achieve through the work that you are doing now?
I have no hopes, nor desires, nor expectations, only to be of service.
And finally, what is your life's purpose?
To know the truth.
And with that, we bring this particular conversation to an end. But Leonard, we will have you back again to continue this conversation because I just love I love where it goes. I really do.
Yeah. I do too.
Leonard Perlmutter is my guest, and you can go to his website, AmericanMeditation.org, and to get a copy of either of his books. And we will be linked to his website as well, as we did with our last conversation. And we hope that you will do what you can, folks, to continue to spread the word and the consciousness about conscience. Don't you love those two words? Those are pretty great. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal.